The establishment of civil and religious liberty was the motive which induced me to the field. The object is attained, and it now remains to be my earnest prayer that the citizens of the United States could make a wise and virtuous use of the blessings placed before them. But if we are to be told by a foreign power what we shall do, and what we shall not do, we have independence yet to seek, and have contended hitherto for very little. Gentlemen, you will permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have grown not only gray, but almost blind in the service of my country. Government is not reason and it is not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Never for a moment should it be left to irresponsible action. I do not mean to exclude altogether the idea of patriotism. I know it exists, and I know it has done much in the present contest. But I will venture to assert that a great and lasting war can never be supported on this principle alone. It must be aided by a prospect of interest or some reward. The foundations of our national policy will be laid in the pure and immutable principles of private morality, and the preeminence of free government be exemplified by all the attributes which can win the affections of its citizens, and command the respect of the world. The preservation of the sacred fire of liberty, and the destiny of the republican model of government, are justly considered deeply, perhaps as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. It should be the highest ambition of every American to extend his views beyond himself, and to bear in mind that his conduct will not only affect himself, his country, and his immediate posterity, but that its influence may be coextensive with the world, and stamp political happiness or misery on ages yet unborn. The hand of Providence has been so conspicuous in all this, that he must be worse than an infidel that lacks faith, and more than wicked, that has not gratitude enough to acknowledge. No country upon earth ever had it more in its power to attain these blessings than United America. Wondrously strange, then, and much to be regretted indeed would it be, were we to neglect the means and to depart from the road which Providence has pointed us to so plainly. I cannot believe it will ever come to pass. Overgrown military establishments are under any form of government inauspicious to liberty, and are to be regarded as particularly hostile to republican liberty. I anticipate with pleasing expectations that retreat in which I promise myself to realize, without alloy, the sweet enjoyment of partaking, in the midst of my fellow citizens, the benign influence of good laws under a free government, the ever-favorite object of my heart, and the happy reward, as I trust, of our mutual cares, labors, and dangers. I hope, some day or another, we shall become a storehouse and granary for the world. The time is near at hand which must determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. Jealousy and local policy mix too much in all our public councils for the good government of the Union. In a words, the Confederation appears to me to be little more than a shadow without the substance. Wish from my soul that the legislature of this state could see the policy of a gradual abolition of slavery. I go to the chair of government with feelings not unlike those of a culprit who was going to the place of his execution. The value of liberty was thus enhanced in our estimation by the difficulty of its attainment, and the worth of characters appreciated by the trial of adversity. Where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation deserts the oaths? Gambling is the child of avarice, the brother of iniquity, and the father of mischief. Mankind, when left to themselves, are unfit for their own government. We are either a united people, or we are not. If the former, let us, in all matters of general concern, act as a nation, which have national objects to promote, and a national character to support. If we are not, let us no longer act a farce by pretending to it. More permanent and genuine happiness is to be found in the sequestered walks of connubial life than in the giddy rounds of promiscuous pleasure. The army, considering the irritable state it is in, its suffering and composition, is a dangerous instrument to play with. Your love of liberty, your respect for the laws, your habits of industry, and your practice of the moral and religious obligations are the strongest claims to national and individual happiness. Democratical states must always feel before they can see. It is this that makes their governments slow, but the people will be right at last. The foundation of a great empire is laid, and I please myself with a persuasion that Providence will not leave its work imperfect. The liberty enjoyed by the people of these states of worshipping Almighty God agreeably to their conscience is not only among the choicest of their blessings, but also of their rights. It appears to me, then, little short of a miracle, that the delegates from so many different states should unite in forming a system of national government, so little liable to well-founded objections, in proportion as the structure of a government gives force to public opinion. It is essential that public opinion should be enlightened. 'Tis our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world. No morn ever dawned more favorable than ours did, and no day was ever more clouded than the present. Wisdom and good examples are necessary at this time to rescue the political machine from the impending storm. In our progress toward political happiness, my station is new, and if I may use the expression, I walk on untrodden ground. There is scarcely any part of my conduct which may not hereafter be drawn into precedent. A good moral character is the first essential in a man, and that the habits contracted at your age are generally indelible, and your conduct here may stamp your character through life. It is therefore highly important that you should endeavor not only to be learned, but virtuous. The propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right, which heaven itself has ordained. Every post is honorable in which a man can serve his country. A people who are possessed of the spirit of commerce, who see and who will pursue their advantages may achieve almost anything. A man's intentions should be allowed in some respects to plead for his actions. I shall make it the most agreeable part of my duty to study merit, and reward the brave and deserving. No taxes can be devised which are not more or less inconvenient and unpleasant. I hold the maxim no less applicable to public than to private affairs, that honesty is the best policy. Nothing is a greater stranger to my breast, or a sin that my soul more abhors, than that black and detestable one, ingratitude. Of all the animosities which have existed among mankind, those which are caused by a difference of sentiments in religion appear to be the most inveterate and distressing, and ought most to be deprecated. I was summoned by my country, whose voice I can never hear, but with veneration and love. The consciousness of having discharged that duty which we owe to our country is superior to all other considerations. The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph. A sensible woman can never be happy with a fool. The turning points of lives are not the great moments. The real crises are often concealed in occurrences so trivial in appearance that they pass unobserved. I conceive a knowledge of books is the basis upon which other knowledge is to be built. To encourage literature and the arts is a duty which every good citizen owes to his country. The great rule of conduct for us, in regard to foreign nations, is, in extending our commercial relations, to have with them as little political connection as possible. A bad war is fought with a good mind. Strive not with your superiors in argument, but always submit your judgment to others with modesty. Quotes about George Washington. The founders didn't mention political parties when they wrote the Constitution, and George Washington in essence warned us against them in his farewell address. Marianne Williamson. I often say of George Washington that he was one of the few in the whole history of the world who was not carried away by power. There is a destiny which has the control of our actions, not to be resisted by the strongest efforts of human nature. The government of the United States is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion. I shall not be deprived of a comfort in the worst event, if I retain a consciousness of having acted to the best of my judgment. Perseverance and spirit have done wonders in all ages. You think of George Washington, this man who was larger than life, and in some ways he was. But at the same time, he's just a person. Benjamin Walker. George Washington sets the nation on its democratic path. Abraham Lincoln preserves it. Franklin Roosevelt sees the nation through depression and war. George Washington participated as a vestryman in his local congregation, but that didn't really imply any particular kind of religious belief. This was necessary in order to participate in the Societe.